The intention of this session is to give you a broad understanding of product and startup frameworks. And with that note, let's go ahead. We'll start with like 4 different frameworks. We'll talk about 4 different cases. We'll keep it as a discussion. Dunzo, Whitehead Jr., Uber, and Tinder. These 4 frameworks are called the desperate need, the blue ocean, influencing the influencers, and the exclusive affair. We'll start with the first one, the desperate need. That is all about Dunzo. We had a session with Dunzo's growth and product managers. And the way that they segment their customers are core, casual, and power. So in Xartup 13, you have done these experiments, right? You have tried acquiring users, tried doing experiments. So on the basis of that, how Dunzo's team look at it is an outlier, because the way they were able to grow in their initial days, whatever their finances may be right now, was exceptional for the startup ecosystem altogether. So it was called as core, casual, and power users. Let's break it down into small parts. Let's say we meet someone at the club, someone whom I like, right? Whom we like. We try to hit a conversation, a genuine, normal conversation that how are you doing? Maybe asking a name, appreciating whatever they are. If the person likes the other person, then how it goes like is you'll share some drinks, you'll share some good time. And if that vibe happens, I mean, I don't know, you might think how awkward example this is, but literally this is how it works, right? When we are interacting with someone else, it can be a club, it can be one of your friends, then it might turn into a long drive, it might turn into meeting their friends and families. So this is how Dunzo's team looks at users or customers. They start with core users, that is anyone who is trying to interact with this application, trying to download this application, or trying to hit those small talks, texting, and casual dates in the initial days when we are interacting someone else as well. Then once this is done, then we try to go beyond that, like going for movies, casual dates, from casual dates to regular dinners and meeting them regularly, the person you love, maybe one of your friend, one of your family member or cousin, it can be anyone. Then we get to know their families, friends, and try to get in long holidays, right? That's eventually how humans function. In the same way, Dunzo has done a fantastic job in terms of looking at their users in the same way. As someone approaches another person during a club, a meeting or meetup, whatever it is, anyone who is signing up and exploring the features in Dunzo, they call it as core users. The ones who are just trying to explore what Dunzo is. It can be for any app. Then once these people who are signing up or exploring features are getting converted into power users, or what we call as paid customers, then they call it as casual users. And then once these casual users who have just started ordering their first order, it can be grocery, it can be ordering something else as such, then they become a power user. While how do they segment these power users? Basically, regularly ordering multiple items. So iteration is very high, multiple orders in a single day. And how does it then help to segment it like this? We'll look at their framework. So this is what Dunzo's growth team has developed, and it has worked for them really well. And during that session itself, they suggested it for all the startups to look into this. Interestingly, this is based on the frequency score, that is the frequency of someone ordering a food item, and the recency score, how recently the person has ordered in the last few days. If we look at champions, these are the folks who have very high recency score, as in, let's say, Meet, who has ordered food in last 15 minutes. So recency score is pretty high, right? And frequency is also very high. Like Meet orders food every 1 hour, or maybe orders some grocery item every single day in that for that matter. So these are the champion users. So these users are already hooked to the product. They are repetitively ordering food items or maybe grocery items, whatever it is. For another app, it can be daily active users or going to the app on a daily basis. In that sense, how many of you have tried using Instagram, let's say in last 1 hour? Right. Most of us are champion users for Instagram. Recency is very high. Frequency is very high. So intention of a product is to convert every single user into champions, so that we can create a hook that the person visits or uses the functionality again and again, right? Now, why is this long framework over here? When we are starting a venture right now, as all of you are in that stage, we won't get champions. That is fair, right? There might be 1 or 2 or 3 champions, but majority of the users will be in these zones. And these are most of our blind spots that we ignore most of the times. And we end up realizing that our users are not using the app, or we have launched the product, but we are not getting traction, that we call it as, or not getting customers, paid customers. Eventually, it turns out that we haven't focused on understanding where do they lie in the quadrant. Now, what Dunzo did was they created the hibernating segment, which is very low recency score and very low frequency score, right? So the ones who just downloaded the app, kept it in their mobile phone, ordered, let's say once, maybe 3 months back, and now they are not using it at all, right? These are the hibernating users. In the same way, they created multiple layers of users and tried to segment them in a way and tried to tackle each of them to convert them into champions. So in summary, what it will take for a hibernating user to become a champion versus what it will take someone who is a potential loyalist to become a champion will be very different. Right. So now I'll throw a case at you. Let's say you are the product manager of Dunzo with this understanding of core, casual, power users and having a data around this, that these are your champion users, hibernating users. How exactly can you convert? What are the steps that you will take to convert everyone who is hibernating at risk or maybe towards the southern western part of this curve to go up to become champions? What are the steps will you take to make all the other layers of users become champions? Makes sense. But again, when segmentation is there, it can be curated or personalized. Right? Since segmenting has been done, giving targeted notifications, yes, that's what Dunzo guys did actually, and they became very successful in doing that. Even if you see Zomato and look at Zomato's notification in your friends' phones, it will be very different from what Meet gets, what Manoj gets, what Jagmeet gets. They are very different. The way Zomato tries to convey users in terms of their notifications are on the basis of the user segmentation. Based on segmentation, we can collect data on user journey and figure out their behavior. Abhishek, makes sense. What a student wants from Dunzo is very different from what a 50-year-old person wants from Dunzo. All our users have different persona, different needs. So we need to figure out ways to personalize or curate things for them so that they can be converted into champions. And we have two different KPIs to measure that. How recently are they using our product, application, system, whatever it is, and how frequently are they using it? If we can crack only these two things, the recency and frequency, it's a product that is creating a hook among the users and it can go viral like anything. You can imagine any of the products that you admire. I mean, you might hate that product for being into existence, like Instagram taking out a lot of time, but they have created this hook, right? Very high recency, very high frequency, made by LinkedIn. So these are the only two things that we need to focus on while building a product in terms of measuring metrics, not the color quality, color code, whatever it is. All those will boil down to how recently are the users using it and how frequently are they using it. So look at something interesting. Who are the alpha users of Dunzo? When I say alpha users, these are the champion users, champions or alphas, that's what we call them. It's a funny thing actually that happened with Dunzo. Anyone who knows how Dunzo was started. Interestingly, the founder Kabir had a flat in Bangalore and he used to experience a lot of house parties with young people because Bangalore's crowd is very young and vibrant, right? While people were doing house parties, they had a specific need of getting product of shame, let's say cigarettes at 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. in the night, right? So someone has to go down those apartments and go to a pawn shop or whatever it is and get a pack of cigarette, right? That's how it used to be. And that was a desperate need that Kabir could figure out. That people want to get assistance or they are willing to pay a premium for getting product options delivered at 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. in the night. That was a revelation for him. He started a WhatsApp group, added everyone in his society, and sort of started delivering goods by himself. The hustle that he has done is like incredible. Started delivering cigarettes at 12 a.m., 1 a.m. in the night by himself. And that sort of showed the user behavior that they are actually willing to spend a premium in terms of someone delivering that product to them at night. Right. Eventually, it evolved in a way that people started ordering items like food items, putting it in the WhatsApp group. And from there onwards, they could figure out that the groups are increasing in such a fast manner that they actually need to build an app. And that was the inception of an app. And the gist of this conversation is that it's not the product which sells, it's the problem that we figure out or the desperate need. This was the case study of it, right? The desperate need that we can figure out among different customer classes or customer segments, that they are willing to use a shitty version of it, right? A WhatsApp group, can you imagine how simple and lean that product was? It works because it solves a problem. But even if you have some ideas like AI, computer vision based model, which is very complicated as well, if that is not solving a problem, even if we spend like 5 years in building that product, it might not work out. And eventually we'll say building companies is difficult, but are we figuring out the right problems and building the simplest solution to tackle that is a question. So basically, it might be a public company. Let's say if you're talking about Facebook or Instagram, you can go to their 10K statement. 10K statement is their annual report in US. And over there, you can see how many daily active users or monthly active users or total number of users are already there. It's a public statement that they release, right? If it's a private companies, if they are willing to disclose that, they can. If they are not willing to disclose, you might not get that. App Store downloads, you can anyways check, but that is not an exact number of the users. And in your own company's case, obviously, you'll have the database from Google Apps or Apple App Store. Now, again, coming back to Dunzo's case, the way we discussed it initially, right? Core users, casual users, and power users. So this was the initial conversion, 100% core users, like every 100 people who are downloading their app or interacting with them, just 5 of them are becoming casual. Casual as in ordering one food item or grocery item from their app, and eventually 2% becoming par. Now, as you mentioned, the best way to boost this was notification. But notification is a very vague term or a broad term. But understanding customer persona, customer segmentation, and then curating these notification for them is important. In our case, it can be very different. It can be sales calls as well, customer conversations as well. But understanding every customer's need and then solving for their specific burning problem always helps. That's the only crux which I'll keep over here. How to approach the idea if market is already validated by competition and MVP will not be of much use for need of high accuracy in healthcare. Yeah, if market is already validated by competition, then it doesn't actually make sense in a lot of cases. But currently in the startup ecosystem, it might make a lot of sense as well, because most of the startups are going on with their funding, right? They're able to market it. That's why we know them. But it might be the fact that they're not solving exact specific user problems. And in the long run, they might die down. So we can't look at competition as Peter Thiel says, right? Competition are for losers. So eventually it is about our own conviction by talking to our own customers. Even if we see that the competition is doing well, right? We need to validate that. But in some cases, I understand, Jagmeet, that it can be the case that they have validated it really well. We need to reconfirm. And if it works like that, then obviously eventually we are going to grow because we understand the specific problem statement. Hope that helps. If you have any follow-up, please put it. So here the question comes, which other startups have implemented the desperate need framework that we talked about, Dunzo, right? It was a desperate burning problem for a very specific customer segment, very niche customer segment as well. But that's how we get started and then grow it from there onwards. Jio, Swiggy, Zomato, Uber. Okay, good examples. So now we'll move to the second one, Boat. Okay, which is the Blue Ocean framework with Whitehead Junior's case study. Initially, when they launched, they looked very different. It was a shitty MVP that they had. I have a picture of that, I guess. Interestingly, what Whitehead Junior did really well from their own founders, who has actually curated all his experiences in a book called something around freedom. I can't recall the exact name. It's a must read for you as well when you are working on the startup. So their competitive analysis were quite on point. They segmented their user base or competition. When we talked about looking at competition, right? So what is the right way to look at competition is through creating a chart in which we can understand where exactly are the customers. So they segmented the education market for K-12. K-12 is in 1 to 12 students, non-STEM and STEM and coding. So anyone who is non-science, technology, engineering, mathematics background will be categorized over here. So anything like poetry, storytelling, games, logical things, all those stuff. And STEM or coding is a different market altogether. Now they looked at it from a different perspective. One way to look at it is human to human interaction happening, as in like the way we are interacting, right? It's called human to human interaction. Another way is human to machine interaction. When you're watching YouTube videos, that is human to machine interaction. So in the STEM and coding space, human to machine interaction was quite prevalent back then, because Byju's had created a learning app where they can watch videos, kids can watch videos, right? Tinker, Daisy Dinosaur, all these apps were existing. YouTube was existing, where you can actually interact with a machine, as it is called as, and learn STEM or coding for K-12. You can see how specific they are. In non-STEM, also there were a few apps and applications and websites and YouTube channels. When we look at human to human interaction, in the non-STEM space, there was Tutor Vista, VIP Kid, where you can hire let's say, someone who is experienced at writing poetry who can teach it, or someone who is experienced at drawing and they can teach it to the kids. But in the STEM or coding space, there was no human to human interaction happening, as in none of the curated experience was given back then. And that's where they found a blue ocean. That's what it is called as. And if you find such a blue ocean where there are very few competitors, or it can also happen in India's context that in US market or UK market, there is an app or a app or website or product that exists that solves a very specific burning problem or desperate need, as we discussed. And in India, there is a blue ocean. There is no one catering to that market. It's one of the easiest way to get started with, by analyzing competition, or by analyzing other culture and seeing what exactly is a blue ocean in a particular market. If we can find that out by doing these kind of segmentation, and it requires creativity. Once you get started doing this, the major issue that you might face is looking at things from a different angle, right? If someone is looking at just the K-12 market, they might not figure this out. But when they are segmenting it into human to human interaction and human to machine interaction, then you can see their perspective. So that might require some understanding around that. But once you are able to figure out a blue ocean, and it is not a necessary thing, by the way, but it helps. It becomes very easy if we have a blue ocean. Then there will be human to H2H, first mover advantage, platform network effect. Network effect similarly means that more users will get dragged. In K-12, what happens is that parents are the influencers, right? Or the folks who pay for their kid. So let's say one of the parent in my locality got her kid admitted in White Hat Junior. She'll be bragging about it across the floor, across the society, in the park itself, right? And that will create a platform network effect. So automatically more and more people will get attracted, because you'll be the only player for a while in that market. And eventually it became scalable and all this theoretical stuff. But hope you got the gist of what a blue ocean can do for you if you're able to figure it out. So Pawan has a question. Yeah. So Pawan, I have something for this, which will answer your question. A good question, actually. I mean, from every startup that has shut down or on the verge of shutdown, you can learn a lot of things. What are the mistakes they have done throughout their path, right? Because when they got started, I'll show you their unit economics, have like specific numbers on that. Anyways, on top of that, this is how, in a minute or two, I'll answer that. This is how White Hat Junior looked at the market. So now, okay, it's good that we figured out a blue ocean. We figured out a space where there is no competition as such, or very less competition as such, because it is very rare to find out something where there is no competition. Then does it even make sense to build on that? It can be a specific niche problem, right? If you say that someone's key gets lost always, right? There might be very few people who lose their keys. The market can be huge, the market can be small. So it is also very important to look at the market. Is it a huge market to work on? Is it even a $1 million market or not? If the specific problem that you figured out, or the blue ocean that you figured out, is only there for 10 people in the world, then whatever you may build, it won't scale, right? So then it is important to look at competitive analysis from a market sizing perspective. Well, look at TAM, SAM, SOM calculation data. But just to give you a gist, every blue ocean might not scale or become huge. The market might hinder the scalability. So as I mentioned, this was what White Hat Junior in the early days. They were pretty good. As you can see, they were not a 50,000 product as they are right now, right? They're selling it for a fair cost, 2499, 6 classes for kids, obviously. So, and it was a simple landing page, as some of the Accept 13 folks might have already built as of now, right? A very simple landing page, no design aesthetics, but proposing the value proposition in the right way. Live one-on-one coding classes for kids, very straightforward. Live one-on-one, that is human to human interaction, as we discussed. Make your kid a creator and not a consumer of technology, so as it makes sense. So they were building it for the creators. Initially, if you see their approach, it was just through Facebook ad campaigns, organic posts. I'll show you their unit economics, and then we'll come back to what is unit economics for the beginners over here. So initially their customer acquisition cost was $27.5 in India, close to 2200, right? And their lifetime value in India was $105, as you can see. And do you know how many years Whitehead Jr. got an exit to buy juice? How many years did it take them to get? I can't recall the exact numbers, but it was close to $100 million exit that they got. Anyone who is a bit aware, it took them just 3 years to get a $100 million plus exit. It can be $300 million as well. I can't recall the exact numbers, but why that happened? Because if you see companies, they take at least 8-10 years to get an exit or to get IPO'd somewhere, right? With this kind of valuation. Eventually, their unit economics was working from day zero itself. They were profitable from day zero. Customer acquisition cost of $27 and $105 lifetime value, right? So hope that answers your question, Pawan. But what happened later, we'll look at that as well. But before that, for those who are new to these concepts, what is LTV and CAC? LTV stands for lifetime value of a product. So let's say if you're talking about Whitehead Junior, right? Every customer who is signing up for Whitehead Junior for this 2,500 rupees classroom program, how much are they spending in their lifetime? So is it like a coding bootcamp which lasts just for 2,500, or are they upselling some product over there? Or is it a subscription model that they have to continue for 1 year? So on the basis of that, for Whitehead Junior, it was $105. That's what each and every customer of Whitehead Junior were spending in their lifetime. That's what they estimated. And customer acquisition cost mostly stands for how much did we spend on sales and marketing to get one customer acquired. Yeah, Pawan, I'm coming to that, right? So before moving ahead with anything, I would ask you a simple case. How would you calculate the lifetime value of a customer in Swiggy? Imagine you are the founder of Swiggy. So how would you calculate lifetime value of a customer in Swiggy? Yeah, a lot of education companies or any of the e-commerce companies as well use Zoho CRM, right? And Zoho CRM usually costs INR 3,500 for one user for 1 month. So in 12 months, we are spending 36. I'll make it 3,000 to make the calculation simpler. 36,000, right? As you can see in the chat box. So within a year in itself, we are spending 36,000 in this B2B case. So this is their annual recurring revenue that we call as ARR, 36,000. And like very simple terms, but just to make sure we all are in the same page. In the same way, MRR or monthly recurring revenue is 3,000 for Zoho, right? Now we'll see what is the churn duration, as in how many years does a company stick to Zoho. So right now they are almost 23, 24-year old, I guess. Zoho were established in 1999. If I am correct. But on that basis, they'll have data on what is their average user retention period. So let's say every company sticks to them for 4 years and then something happens and they change their CRM software, right? So for Zoho, it will be very simple in terms of calculation, right? 36,000 into 4 years. That will be their average lifetime value, right? Does that make sense, Pawan? Okay, no worries. So in the same way, I think there was a question over there that in terms of user segmentation as well, it will vary, right? And on that note, there is an interesting example. If you see Zomato spend, because they are public right now, they release their annual report. If you go through that, you'll see that the amount that they spend on advertising in Mumbai versus the amount that they spend in a tier 3 city like Bhubaneswar, for an example, is way different. Why does that happen? Because in Mumbai, their customer acquisition can go up because the lifetime value of the customer is also very high. In Mumbai, if I'm purchasing a biryani for, let's say, 500 rupees, in Bhubaneswar, it will be around 200 rupees, right? So there is a marginal difference between lifetime value, city-wide, customer segmentation wide, customer persona wide. And to acquire those customers, we need to think how much exactly are we willing to spend. So that is why the advertising budget in metro cities are very high, whereas in small towns or villages, it is very low. Abhishek has mentioned like in a month, we use 8 times in a month and minimum order of 1,000 for a week and 4,000 in one, 48,000 in a year. Yeah, this is good. You have to just understand how many year does the customer stick to the product, and that's where it becomes complex. But good one, Abhishek. In today's time, e-commerce business worth it, like drop shipping or drop servicing. So we have a lot of D2C founders Tags Foods, which was on Shark Tank. Arjun Vaidya, who built Dr. Vaidya's, who have been to Xartup as guest mentors, will have few mentors in September after the evaluation is done. And I think you must have got that guest session thing, right? Where there is an Excel and recorded videos are over there. If you haven't got, we'll send it across today. If you see the D2C market, what these founders understand is that it works on repeat orders. Initially, if we are selling a product for 100 rupees, our user acquisition cost can be 300 or 400. But if the customer who was acquired for 300 is buying that 100 rupees product for 12 months, then that's how the D2C market actually works. It might not work from day zero, but if people are purchasing that same product every day, then it works really well. Like let's say Vim Bar for an example, right? Maybe just a wild guess, but 40% of you who are in this session might be using Vim Bar for washing your dishwash, right? But is Vim Bar doing advertising these days? They've stopped doing advertising since long, right? Or they are spending very less budget. But initially, Hindustan Unilever was doing a lot of advertising to acquire their user base. But if once the acquisition is done and the user gets hooked to the product for a long time, then only that profitably comes to the picture. And on that note, that is why eventually the product is the end game, which works really well. We might have great customer acquisition strategy, marketing, but if the product is not working, eventually it will die down. On that note, LTV by CAC is the metrics that we use for unit economics. If lifetime value is greater than customer acquisition cost, then well and good. But if lifetime value is less than customer acquisition cost, if you are acquiring customers for 100, as simple as that, and lifetime value is 90, then we are making a loss of 10 rupees on each and every sales, each and every customer. And eventually, that's how a lot of startups shut down because they run out of capital. Anuj is saying new competitors require their target market to be educated about them. And later, when they are used to it, get many repeating customers. Very quite on point. That's eventually how it is. That's why VCs spend a lot of money in D2C brands to spread the awareness. But they have to trust the product that people will get hooked to this and order it again and again. So again, coming back to Whitehead Junior's number, it was working like anything during the period when they launched. And that is the reason why they got an exit within 3 years. That too at a scale of greater than $100 million with a small team as well. But after the acquisition, Byju's had a different strategy altogether, right? They increased their cost from 2,500, 10,000, like 4-5 months, whatever they were charging, to 50,000 per month. They made it very expensive, and that was targeted at just the tier 1 metro cities in India. And the value proposition was not that great after even purchasing that high premium product. So that's when it actually went down. There's a question of what M5 refers to. It's actually month 5. So if break-even happens in month 5, you can see how good it is, right? They started investing and within 5 months itself, they did break even because they had their operational fixed expenditure that they need to pay back even after making profits. But look at their unit economics. On every unit of customer sales, they are making close to $70, right? There's a huge cushion space to grow over here. If you're able to draw these kind of unit economics, then it becomes very easy to grow in the market. We'll have the cash surplus to grow the team, grow the infra, and sort of put it forward. And these kind of models work really well while bootstrapping if you're willing to go through that journey. Whatever cash surplus you are getting, you have to reinvest and grow eventually. In US, it was even better. The customer acquisition cost was high, as I mentioned. In Mumbai versus in Bhubaneswar, there will be very different customer acquisition cost. That's what they saw in India versus in US. But at the same time, the lifetime value was also very high. So per unit customer, if you can see, customer acquisition cost is high. That is there. But they are making almost $220 per unit in US. Whereas in India, they are just making $70 per unit. So yeah, on that note, let's move ahead with the third one. Spotify is up to, thanks, Anand. And hopefully till now, you got like two important aspects of things. The problem, which is a desperate need on a broad context, but specifically also it is very important to have painkiller. Then the blue ocean. And if that painkiller lies in a blue ocean where no one is trying to solve the problem, that is good. But it's a very rare combination to find, a desperate need in the blue ocean. Now we'll see influencing the influencers, which is more from a marketing perspective, but we'll see how Uber has implemented it. Before that, we'll go through a concept called BCG metrics. Like we are unrevealing few concepts within the case studies itself on unit economics, blue ocean framework. Similarly, BCG metrics look something like this. And this is one of the most important ways to understand the VC-backed startup ecosystem, what investors look for, how to sort of create a long-term plan and all those stuff. So trying to make it very simple, there are like four different quadrants, as you can see. So the companies can exist in one of these quadrants. It can be a star, a question mark, a dog, or a cow. BCG developed it, Boston Consulting Group. In the X quadrant, as you can see, it's about market share. It goes from high market share to low market share. In Y quadrant, it is growth. So it goes from low growing startups or low growth ventures to high growth ventures. On that note, if you look at a question mark, you'll find out it's a low market share thing with high growth, right? Market share is low, as in it's a niche market, like we talked about Dunzo's initial market, if you can recall. It was about people who were purchasing cigarettes at 12 a.m. in the night in Bangalore who were very young and doing house parties. So many filters, right? There might be 50,000 or maybe 1 lakh or even more people over there. But it's a low market because they are very specific niche ki Bangalore's crowd who are very young doing house party. But that sort of helps while starting out with a low market share. But the growth was high. Why? Because it was a blue ocean. It was a desperate need in the blue ocean thing for Dunzo. And these kind of combination mostly lies in the question mark stage, where market share is very low, but there are no incumbents who are beating or trying to tap into that market. So growth becomes very high. I think someone in the chat box, Abhishek, mentioned about Kuku FM, right? Or Zerodha in their early days. When Kuku FM is trying to tap into the Bharat market where there are no incumbents, right? Spotify is not fighting with Kuku FM over there. In Bharat market, the market share is very low because digital adoption has just started. Very few people who understand podcast. They're trying to replace radio. Kuku FM, that's what they are doing. So market share is low, but growth is high because incumbents are less. So it's that deadly combination that we talked about. Desperate need in the blue ocean. We'll look at it from Uber's angle. Do you know the early days of Uber? It will be a question for you. Who were they trying to tap into? So what was their market share, or who were their ideal customers initially with low market share, and why were they able to grow highly? It's a hint that Uber lies in the question mark stage. Put it down in the chat box or feel free to give a reaction. Office workers, okay, corporates. Feel free to put in the chat box why Uber's early days, airport rides. Take some time, you can articulate. People who are in hurry and don't want to wait for a taxi or a bus or a train. Make it more specific, the user persona. You'll be doing this for your own venture, right? Who are the champion users? Specifically who are, like, what is specificity is not subjective, it is very clear. For Dunzo, it was again the young audience, Bangalore, who do house party 12 a.m. in the night looking for product option. How specific it is, right? There might be very few people, but Vikram, I think, did a good job. Guys who party more and don't want to drive while drunk, right? Very specific, yeah. Young audience, airport users working in corporate sector of tier one. Young audience, if you see, say Akash, it is also very vague. So it's a concept of ideal customer profile. Actually, how specific can you be? When you say late night employees, can you put more filters? Late night employees of tech companies in this particular age group, in this particular location, right? And if each and every filter is connecting the dots to the company's problem statement, that becomes interesting. Akash is trying to help you out, I guess. MNC's late night employees. People who do not trust other commute options for pricing and transparency. Okay. Bachelors to elevating parking concerns, Megha. Okay, this is also good, but to elevate parking concerns for whom? Who are the users and where? The specificity is again missing. So if you can try to change that. People who felt that the current market price for a ride is high and looking for a cheaper price and also wanted to travel in taxi. Waiting time was less, which lead to growth. New travelers. I want you to put more filters, as many filters as you can put, right? And as specific as you can be. Booking an auto or a taxi problem on time. Like, I'm not expecting that you know the general knowledge and you have the answer, but can you be on the same page with how the Uber's founders thought or how the Dunzo's founder thought when they were trying to understand their champion users or alpha users. Dunzo, you saw one case, Uber will see another, but still the specificity is, you're quite there. It has improved, but not exactly there. Wow. Jagmeet has a good point now. People who wanted to know when they'll reach the destination and use the iPhone a lot. This is a good way to segment users. Users who use iPhone. That's a really good filter to put. So Jagmeet has got one aspect of it. Uber's early users were iPhone users. Actually, safety of email drives traveling, late night, evening, ability to track that. Yeah, Vikram, I guess someone has started in this particular space. It wasn't Uber, but recently it's a good way to look at the user segmentation. Aman is saying time, punctual people, easy availability for the user. Okay. Yashwant, reliable, affordable. First filter, a way to get around town without having to worry about parking or traffic. Second filter, a way to share rides with other people. So these are some characteristics, general characteristics, which is good. But can you be more specific on the geography, on the age group, on the type of users? Are they employees? Are they students? What exactly? 25 to 40 age group. Okay, got it. Good brainstorming, I guess. We all have got a lot of insights on how we think. Let's see how Uber's founders thought for this. As you can see, here's a limo. In Hollywood, it was quite famous. If you see the 0 to 1 days of Uber, it was one of the pioneers in this space, right? There were private limo services or cab services. Meet it saying marketing play, getting user to know they get what they perceive quickly and with cost. Yeah, this is good. But let's see what it was. So the luxury limo services. There was a huge market in US where limos were there. If you see San Francisco or New York in the Wall Street or in the bank street, there are investment bankers who sort of walk over there who are quite rich, but they spend a lot of time in trying to hail taxis or cabs prior to Uber. So eventually, what Uber did was, again, look at the filters they have put. Limo services in San Francisco, iPhone users who were investment bankers in bank streets of San Francisco, because they prioritized time over money and they were earning more than $1 million a month. That's how specific Uber was in their target segment. So specific that they could have only 50,000 or 1 lakh users across the whole San Francisco. For them, they started this limo service, luxury car, where you can just using your iPhone. iPhone was a fad back then. Now it has become democratized. You can, on a snap of your finger, you can get a cab booked for you who will be picking you up. Prior to that, what was happening? They were standing in the road, these guys who were earning in the millions, and trying to hail a cab by showing their hand, because parking issue is legit over there. Yeah, Vikram, right. So just 3 cars, as you can see, very specific to their 0 to 1 problem. They're not thinking huge that we'll hire agencies, we'll do this, we'll do that. Very specific ground level thinking. 3 cars, very specific customer segment with multiple layers of filters. And then the movie actually began. When they started doing this, when they started looking at just acquiring their initial 10 or 100 users, then a rat race started playing into picture. The analysts or the associates at these banks who were admiring the MDs or EDs, that's what we call it as in investment banking, started chasing Uber because they also want to get the facilities like their managing director or executive director is getting, right? So when Uber tried segmenting their user and tried narrowing it down to very granular extent, it actually helped them. They didn't say that we are building for everyone in the world. They were very focused on building it for just the 50,000 people in San Francisco, just for them. And when they did this, and because these 50,000 people were influencers or motivators for a lot of their employees or a lot of people in that locality, people started chasing that kind of lifestyle. And that is when the market share started going from low market share game, wherein they were just catering to 50,000 users in San Francisco, to a high market share game where anyone across the world wants to get this kind of service, convenience at their snap of fingers. And that is the reason why they burned billions of dollars, right? Uber could have been very profitably run a limo agency in San Francisco with good unit economics, like we saw for the White Hat Juniors case, or like we saw for the Dunzo's case. So when we start with the low market share game, in most of the cases, it becomes profitable. Unit economics becomes good. But if we are trying to capture the market share and from building it for those 50,000 people to build it for the 7 billion people in the world, that's when we require VC money. And that's when it moves from a question mark stage to a star stage. Yeah, no worries. Abhishek. It's not about knowing that fact, but it's about understanding how exactly is it happening, the granular details behind that. So on that note, like while getting started, and this is a framework that a lot of folks in our guest sessions have also mentioned who have built good startups before. That initially starting with a niche customer segment and then moving it forward. So any more examples that you can see which started with a low market share game with a very high growth? And you know why it happens? It has that deadly combination of blue ocean plus a burning problem or desperate need. Because eventually, when we get started with this, there is a whole network effect which gets into play to make us a star. Think through those examples, you can correlate to the startup ecosystem a lot here. Now, if we see cash cow, then once it has achieved very high market share, then eventually growth slows down. As in, let's say it started from 1 million annual recurring revenue and went up to 1 billion annual recurring revenue. But after a point in time, it will be just 1.1 billion or 1.125 billion. So the growth will eventually slow down. And that's how ventures work. After we tap into a very high market share, after the IPO happens and all these things. And in this time period, mostly the customer acquisition cost is reduced. People start investing less in marketing. Look at Hindustan Unilever, look at Bajaj Auto, look at any of the listed companies, HDFC for that matter, the largest bank now, somehow world's fifth or sixth largest bank. They have reduced a lot in terms of their marketing, right? But their growth is also slowed down. If you look at a growth of a startup versus a growth of a listed company, it will be very low. So that's when they become cash cow. So their profitability metrics goes up. Public money comes into the picture. And this is what investors actually want you to get started with a question mark so that they can fund and take it to the star. And once it becomes a star, it's all about managing that star and making it a cash cow in the long run. Mostly private equity investors come into this, public investors come into this particular phase. Not relevant to startups, but this is what the investors are aiming for if they can be cash cows in the long run. But if you look at the ones who buy primary shares of public companies, they are eventually looking for stars. Let's say in Mama Earth's IPO, some wealthy investors are looking for buying primary shares before the company goes listed, right? So they will be looking for stars. But if you are asking the question from a startup perspective or VC perspective, then they are looking for question mark. They want you to have a very specific niche, small customer size. I'm saying small customer size, yes, to get started with, but have a long aim of tapping into a very high market share in the long run, because that's when growth will be very high with the small customer size. And in Bharat market, if you see, the opportunity is huge now with Khata Book, OK Credit. These folks have actually done it and showed it, right? That market can grow like anything if we tap into the right customer segment. So VCs are looking for a star, to be specific. And it can be good to bootstrap or build an agency for that matter. But VCs are not looking for low growing and low market share startups. So mostly services agencies will lie into this. And if VCs are not looking for this, it's not a good business. It can be a good family business. It can be a good bootstrapping journey. It can be a good business as such, but it cannot be something that VCs can come into the play, right? So when you're talking to the analysts of these VCs or maybe associates over there, they are hunting for question mark. They are trying to segment you into question mark or this phase in the BCG metrics. Jagmeet, to show a star, it will require a lot of effort, right? I'm trying to look at some examples. Zerodha, let's say. If Zerodha goes for funding right now, they can say that we are already a star. We have bootstrapped it to become a star and we want to raise funding. But if you already are a star, then you might not be chasing venture capitalists, right? Because they are here to help you become a star from a question mark. You might be chasing public money or getting listed on NASDAQ, NYSE, BSE, NSE, all these stuff. Once you are a star, you won't be looking for a pre-seed funding when you are a star. What it means to be a star is you are a market leader. You are an alpha in that particular market, right? In the trading market, like Zerodha has established its brand. As per my understanding, it has a 35 or 40% market share in the public trading market, and that is huge. So to be at that point, you might need a lot of funding, or if you're able to figure out a blue ocean and desperate need and tap into that with your own money, reinvesting that can happen, because Zerodha has been able to do this. Without funding, they have become a star. But if you are a star, you won't look for pre-seed. You look for an IPO maybe, because after a star, you can become a cash cow, right? Hope that answers. But a good question. There is a story behind how Uber was launched in India. And again, we are talking about the influencing the influencers framework, right? So it was that rat race which was curated, coming back to what we were discussing specifically. So when we start with this low market share, if we can keep it specific to influencers in the market, we call it as big fish in the pond, right? Getting the big fish in the pond first, and they'll eventually create small fish by doing reproduction, by attracting other big fish towards themselves, something like that. If that happens, then the network effect comes into the picture. So that is why the influencing the influencer framework exists. Even in India, when they launched, they hired some of Bangalore's influencers and asked them to give free passes of Uber to other people. And those people or general public started chasing influencers, and that's how Uber became famous. So instead of spending on digital marketing, paid acquisition, they were spending a lot on creating a halo effect, that we call it as, and then trying to build a brand around that. So in your market, you can understand or sort of think through right away as well, who are the influencer customers who have this specific burning problem, like Uber had for the investment bankers who have very deep pocket, right? And who were MDs and EDs in the companies. So they kept the price point at a place where these MDs and EDs were only able to use that. It was only an iPhone application. And when these influencers started using that product, the normal people eventually came into a rat race and started chasing it again. And that created a whole network effect across the globe, which is a phenomenon right now as such. So which other startups have implemented the influencing the influencers framework? You can try to consume this information, take 1 or 2 minutes, and then we can continue with the last one. Yeah. So put some answers so that I understand you got this, because there are a lot of instances, but you have to think from a different perspective. Which other startups have implemented this influencing the influencer framework, as in having influencers as their customers first, and then trying to tap into the normal public or making it a star. Clubhouse, really good example. Anand. Mama from Twitter, maybe for Indian market. What about Cred? If you look at their journey, yeah, Vikram, right? Coup, yeah, the politicians in Coup, right? And it works. It works with a lot of companies with D2C brands. The customer acquisition cost goes down. We won't be doing the hard race of doing just the digital marketing campaigns, though it is required. Credit equals good advertising. Yeah, Ashar, Yashwant. Perfect. So on that note, we'll move to the last one on a small piece, the exclusive affair, which is about Tinder. In Tinder, why are we talking about exclusivity? Spotify, good one. Because Tinder is more for the masses, right? But let's look at Tinder's journey. Before that, let's talk about Cred, because we mentioned about Cred. Happen. Okay. Is it like HAPPN or which one you are talking about? Cred has curated exclusivity right from the beginning itself, right? Just for the premium customers with very high credit score. And then that market started going up. They started tapping into more and more such customers. Cred wasn't even available on App Store or Play Store initially. It was an app that you have to download and use it on your phone. And that too, if one of your friend has invited you, then only you can sign into that particular app, like Clubhouse did in their initial days. If your friend hasn't invited you, you can't use that app, right? Yeah, FOMO creation. It might sound silly for someone who is more core into digital marketing, that I would allow my users to join the app. Why should I restrict them? But psychologically, what works in terms of user acquisition is making it exclusive for a tribe or a pattern. And that's how this kind of invite only strategy works really well in comparison to a for everyone approach. Eventually, anyways, all these companies are going towards the everyone approach, from question mark to star, as we saw. But we have to understand that we can't cater to 7 billion users across the world from day zero itself. So we can start with 100 users, give them satisfaction, give them personalization, small groups, maybe one-on-one, whatever it is, and then move forward to the masses. Exclusivity, make the user feel special at the same time. At first, okay, makes sense. We talked about Kunal Shah. What about Steve Jobs? Was it a lot of exclusivity from day zero here? Was it just a digital marketing game where we are trying to sell the product upfront, that purchase this, purchase this, purchase this? It was more about innovative products. Yeah, product innovation, right? I mean, at Cred as well, if you see their product, it is very premium. The design, that feel, the look. And those premium kind of products like Cred or Apple will attract premium customers who are more inclined towards an exclusive base or trying to build a community of their own. In education itself as well, let's look at ISB. It was similar to a master's union or STOA these days, right? Eventually, in last 20 years, it was started by Pramath, who has built a lot of education businesses. And this actually helped these students. The exclusivity of ISB, which is there right now, it can be called as a brand. If they want, they can take in everyone, right? But still, it is helpful for both the ends, both the customers and the company when exclusivity is there. Apple initially attracted hackers, people who like to customize their own system. Then later, Steve Jobs made it exclusive and brought the premium factor. Makes sense. Abhishek. Moving forward, talking about another framework now, it is which is quite close, the exclusive affair one. What's common between all these? The only common thing is the effect that they are able to curate, right? Someone who is looking at an Apple's laptop, let's say, sitting in a Starbucks, subconsciously there is an effect which is getting curated around the personality of that person. That this guy is rich, this person has a lot of money, right? Eventually, Cred tried to curate this kind of effect that this person uses Cred. So now if you see, Cred has integrated UPI payment in their apps, right? So a lot of people are using Cred to pay using QR code scanning and all these things. And that gives them a credibility that, okay, I'm using Cred, so I'm a high paying or high earner, something like that to show off. And in that way, the network effect eventually works in all these exclusive affair cases. Now let's talk about Tinder and how they implemented it initially. And it's a mass, it is for it is for something which is built for the masses, right? So when we are talking about exclusivity, influencing the influencers or tapping into just the first 100 or first 1,000 users, rather than focusing on 7 billion, it might be very contradictory to you because you want to build for the masses, for the globe, for the world, right? And VCs are also looking for companies that can scale to a huge extent. But why exactly are we talking about the 100 or 1,000 users, the initial ones? The answer specifically lies here on how Tinder creates that exclusivity. So eventually, when Tinder was started, the supply group, as in there are in a marketplace, there are two sides always, the supply side and the demand side. And for Tinder as well, it is like that. So to sort out the supply side, they hosted girls only ball parties in colleges of US. Only girls are invited over there. Having the Tinder app was a ticket to enter into these kind of parties. And that is how they onboarded thousands of females into their platform by giving them access to ball parties, right? And if you don't have the Tinder app, you can't enter. And there are only females. So you don't have any hesitation to getting into a random party because anyways, there are only females over there. Once they were able to figure out this thing, which was the elephant in the house for them or a problem of that scale, then demand side was sorted by itself because males anyways got attracted towards that. So in everything as such, in every product, there is a supply side and a demand side. If we are able to figure out the supply side, like in the influencing the influencer framework, we discussed that if we can get influencers on board for free, I'm not talking about influencer marketing here. That's a very different concept altogether. If we can influence the influencers to use our application, to sort of brag about our application or send invite codes of our application to other users by making it invite only, then the demand side anyways get curated. Let's say one of your influencer with Sachin Tendulkar, he is using some product and he's referring some of his friends to use that. And periodically in a ladder, you are getting that app or product at the end. So there is a huge probability that the demand will be very high. Now, this is one of the strategies in terms of marketing, like I mentioned before, in terms of product marketing. It can also fail. It can go awry as well. And it has happened with Clubhouse. If you see, they curated a good way in terms of figuring out supply side, getting users on demand side. But eventually, the app didn't scale as much as they expected. So for user acquisition, it works really well, but the product has to work eventually to increase stickiness or increase the utility of that application. And influencing the influencers always make it a cakewalk to make things happen in this way. So here on this scale, there is a starters framework that a lot of these exclusivity apps talk about. When we talk about number of users in the y-axis and starters in the x-axis, very subjective, but high starters simply stands for using something that not everyone is privileged to use. So very high starters with very low number of users, that's where it gets started. Like in the case of Cred, everyone who is a top-notch CEO will have access to Cred. In the initial days, just 1,000 people. Starters is very high, and number of users is very low. So that is the reason why the CEOs will download it, because the halo effect is created for them. That, okay, this is what is just for you. They are getting starters from here. So that's something where I would like to end this with. And you can sort of come up with companies which are using these frameworks in terms of reducing their customer acquisition cost, building a good brand as such. This is what it was for today.